Alright, happy Saturday. It's another live stream. I got a bunch of plants to show you updates on. I'm gonna do a kind of a peekaboo. I did a couple of shorts earlier this week on I call them peekaboo videos. I don't use the humidity domes on the seedling trays. I use really fancy equipment. I'm saying that tongue in cheek. Yeah, I'm gonna show you. There you go. Here's my fancy equipment here. I did a video on here earlier this week with this seed tray. I called it a peekaboo video, and I actually see stuff growing in here now, so you can kind of see what's growing. So you'll see a lot of these seed trays with the humidity domes for sale online in stores. You don't need to buy those. If you have a high quality seedling tray like these ones, these are wind strip trays from Never Sink Farms. They're air prune trays, so you see on the bottom they're open like that. The best part about this that I like is that they bottom water, so I never have to put water up on the top, which is convenient because if you get too much water up on the top of these trays, you can get some fungal problems, and they work very well. I've been using them for about 4 years now. I've been really, really happy with them. One of the other keys to success here is a fan like that. I didn't use a fan until about 5 years ago, and I realized the importance of keeping moving over seedlings when they're at this stage. So I'm gonna take my handheld phone here and just kind of walk around what we got. This week's gonna be a big push because I have a lot of warm season plants starting, like tomatoes and peppers. But this tray's got a bunch of little seedlings going, various stages. There's some leafy greens on there. And this one's a week older than that one. These are a bunch of edible flowers. These are what nasturtiums look like at about 2.5 weeks. Some broccoli and cabbage, and then this is the purple cabbage. So the stage of growth for these seedlings right here, they're not huge. Some of them still have their seedling leaves. So like right here, these are the seed leaves, or what we call seed leaves. Over here on this cabbage, these are seed leaves, and then these leaves right here, this is what we call the true leaves. So when the seedling comes to life after it breaks dormancy, comes out of its seed shell, you'll see these two leaves first, and then after it starts photosynthesizing, making its own food, then you'll start to see these true leaves pop out. And this is getting about to the stage, like right here, you can see these guys, they're just under an inch each. This is about the stage where I start adding a really weak fertilizer. So all these seedlings in this tray, they haven't seen any fertilizer yet. It's just been water. If you didn't know that, that's the cool part about nature's a seed that's stored. It has all the carbohydrates and sugars that that plant needs when it comes out of dormancy. So no fertilizer is required. In fact, if you add fertilizer, it's probably going to have a detrimental effect. And I made a mistake a few years ago of accidentally putting water from that onto the seedlings. That's why it says fertilizer now. I had a problem for about 3 weeks where I accidentally put a fertilizer mixture or solution on the plants, and they didn't die, but they were very unhappy for a while until I was able to rinse it out with a soil solution, and then they were able to recover. But once once the seeds break dormancy, they don't need any fertilizer. You see what these guys are? They just broke dormancy. They're just coming to life. And then over here, I got carrot seeds that I started the wrong way. This is how I start carrots, which looks insane because nobody talks about that, but that's how I do it. And then I have my strawberry plant. Should be a couple of fruits in there. Let's see, move that. Oh yeah, I got a big boy right there. That is a big, that's the first fruit of the year on this plant. You can see how big that is. It should be ripe by the end of the week. This is called All Star. Anyway, that's the update on what's happening here so far. This is the slow start, but we're just about past the slow start of the year. Okay, that part of this is always like show and tell. And so those are the trays that are running right now, mostly with the early season leafy greens like cabbage, broccoli. They take a while to develop. And for my residential instant garden customers, I try to get those to the point where they're ready to harvest broccoli and cabbage end of May, early June. So the season starts first week of May, runs to the end of October, and I've developed over many years a system to where I can predict when I can harvest plants here in Minnesota. It gets really tricky because here in Minnesota, like we're under a blizzard warning for this weekend, so which is kind of funny because I'll bring this guy back out here. Which is kind of funny because I don't know how many other growers in Minnesota have strawberries that are already bearing fruit. This is a June bearing strawberry plant too. I didn't mention that, but we're under a blizzard warning for this weekend. Foot of snow maybe or more, and I got strawberries that are about ready to eat here. So if you haven't seen that, also it's possible to grow fruiting plants like strawberries, or I haven't done raspberries, but I kind of want to experiment with growing those indoors at some point in time also. Uh, but May through October here in Minnesota, that's usually the growing window that I focus on, and it can be challenging. So a lot of my customers that have been growing with me for years, they already know that by the end of May, early June, it's possible we'll have 90-degree weather. That's kind of nutty because sometimes around Mother's Day in May, we can have frost warnings, which is another reason why I love grow bags and container gardening, because if we get a late cold snap here in Minnesota, I can simply pick up the containers and move them inside the house. If you are unfortunate enough to have them in the ground at that point, then you kind of have to scramble to cover them up with frost blankets and whatnot. But yeah, blizzard warning this weekend, and I got strawberries ready to harvest inside. Cheers. So I'm kind of curious, what are you guys growing this year? Any Minnesota growers in there? Drop it in the comments. Like I mentioned, peppers and tomatoes are starting up this week. I'll do more videos on those. I built a homemade germination chamber quite a few years ago now, and I can do about 16, usually about 16 to 20 racks at a time. So that's 20, 10 by 20 trays. I'll put this back on so you can see that. So these are 10 by 20 trays, or what's called 10 by 20 trays. So these are what I'll start my peppers and tomatoes in. These are 128 cells. I'll do the peppers and tomatoes in 72 cells. But these 10 by 20 trays, that's what I'll use to start the peppers and tomatoes, and that's normal. The difference is that with Okay, there we go. I got that one back. The difference is the 72 they got a little bit more space, and then I don't know if you haven't used heat heat mats, you'll see advertisements for that too, for peppers and tomatoes especially. But what I found with peppers is the hotter the pepper in Scoville units, so Carolina Reapers, ghost peppers, those need more heat than say a jalapeno or a cayenne pepper to germinate. And if they don't have the hotter heat or warmer heat, they'll take longer. So habaneros at about 85 degrees, from the years I've been doing this, I can usually get them to germinate in about 5 days. Most of my tomatoes will germinate in three, jalapenos like 2 or 3. But 85 degrees is where I usually keep my germination chamber for doing the warm season plants. So if you're gonna start peppers or tomatoes, and this is the first year that you've experimented with those or try to grow them out from seed, you absolutely need a warm spot. 85 degrees is a great temperature to shoot for. If you got a heat mat that does that, awesome. I don't expect you to build a germination chamber like I have, but I had to do that because I didn't want to spend the money on getting a bunch of heat mats. So you'll see with the bigger plant nurseries, they'll have germination chambers. Hello. So if you're just joining, what are you growing this year? What do you hope to grow? Okay, a couple other things to talk about. Since we're getting a blizzard warning tonight into tomorrow, it's possible we're gonna get a foot of snow or more. So usually when we get to April or so here in Minnesota, the snow doesn't stick around forever, but it is something to think about is having a game plan for when the snow finally melts off. Because like I said earlier, we can have crazy weather in April and May, so if you're gearing up to transplant stuff like these guys right here, I'll cut to it again. If you want to transplant these guys out once the snow melts, it's ready. It's better to prepare now and have your game plan set to get these guys outside rather than scrambling once the snow melts off. So, and I've said this for the last couple of weekends too. If you haven't purchased your seeds yet, definitely get on the ball with that. I know last month, and it's mid-March now, usually starts in January, February is when I get inundated with all the seed catalogs. And I have about 7 vendors that I buy seeds from on a regular basis now. As my plant nursery grows, I get more and more from Johnny Selected Seed. They're one of the bigger commercial seed companies. I don't have any of the seed pouches here. That's all right. But Johnny's is a good one. High Mowing Organic Seeds is another one. They're out in the East Coast. Um, but yeah, if you don't have seeds, get your seeds. The best part about starting plants from seeds like we do here is it's almost a bottomless well on plant varieties. So if you're typically buying plant starts from like a Home Depot or another big box store, that's fine. But I encourage you to venture out and start seeds at some point in time because that unlocks a whole new world of possibilities, especially with varieties that aren't necessarily sold at the big box stores. They usually sell the popular ones, um, but for all intents and purposes, a lot of the plant varieties I grew out here are dwarf miniatures, and they're just not available at the big retail nurseries and the big box stores anyway. Just part of the process. But I'm gonna kill the live stream here because I got a ton of work to do. I'll be doing live streams throughout the week so you can see what's going on here at the plant nursery. If you got any questions, just drop them in the comments. I'll look forward to answering those at some point in time. But until next weekend, have a great week. And if you're in Minnesota, have fun building some snowmen tomorrow when we get the snow blizzard.